Good afternoon. This is a call to order of the CAMPO meeting of Wednesday, June 11th, 2025. Can I have a roll call, please?
Chair Novak,
Here.
Vice Chair Maloney,
Here.
Member Bagwell, Member Casanelli,
Here.
Member Dodson,
Here.
Member Erb,
Here.
Member Schutte,
Here.
ex officio Member Capular.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All righty. Move on promptly to item 3, public comment. This is our first opportunity. Do we have any public comment from the audience at this point? All righty. Hearing none, I'll move on to our next item, approval of our minutes of the May 14th, 2025 meeting. All right. I have
Second.
a motion by the mayor and a second by Commissioner Maloney, Member Maloney. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays, the motion carries. All right, we're on to item number 5, our public meeting item for possible action. And it's discussion and possible action regarding 1, amendment number 1 to the cooperative agreement number PR 277-24-802 with the Nevada Department of Transportation, extending the termination date of the agreement to June 30th, 2026, and modifying other clauses of the agreement to allow the CAMPO to continue to seek reimbursement of consolidated planning grant funds that will be carried forward from fiscal year 2025 to fiscal year 2026 up to the current agreement not to exceed amount of $726,172.03. And 2, authority for the transportation manager to sign the agreement and future amendments that extend the time for performance or approve funding changes not to exceed 10% of the present agreement amount. And I guess who's going to be presenting this one? I think it's Chris. Yes, Chris.
And I have my
Oh, you have your disclaimer?
disclosure. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who is employed by Carson City and will be presenting this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his service for the city or with the city, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other resident of Carson City. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting on this matter.
Okay, thank you. Chris, you have our little introduction here, and I see Exhibit 1 is the amendment, and Exhibit 2 is the current executed agreement. So just walk us through this and explain why we're doing this. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. This item is to amend our current cooperative agreement with the Nevada Department of Transportation that funds, in other words, it's the monetary funding agreement for CAMPO's Unified Planning Work Program. This agreement extends the termination date from June 30th, 2025 to June 30th, 2026. The funding amounts in this particular amendment remain unchanged. This amendment is necessary to allow CAMPO to continue to draw down previously allocated, obligated, and approved funds through its UPWP program for carrying out CAMPO's planning activities. We were advised that due to state budget constraints and other factors that we will not be able to seek reimbursement of federal funds until NDOT has approval to seek reimbursement from federal funds from the Federal Highway Administration. Since we have a balance, projected carry forward balance of approximately $160,000, we didn't want those funds to be tied up sitting there. So this amendment allows us to continue to seek reimbursement from NDOT as we draw down our existing approved funding for the UPWP. And a second amendment for this agreement will be required at some point in the future when NDOT does get the approval from the Federal Highway Administration that the fiscal year 26 funds are ready and available to be used, in which case we'll increase the dollar amounts of this amendment to match what the dollar amounts are in the UPWP as we've worked those dollars out with NDOT prior to that UPWP going forward and prior to this amendment coming forward. So that's the high-level summary. I know it's a little different than we've done in past years, but we're trying to make sure we can continue to use the funds we've been obligated.
Okay, some of it becomes, it's state or local fiscal year versus federal fiscal year, and then when Congress takes action, it rarely is anymore on October 1st. So modifying this agreement will try and get us in sync with all of that as best we can. So any other questions or comments from folks? Okay, go ahead.
Just a question in general. When we did this work program a year ago, we had identified the funding mechanisms per item we were doing in the agreement. What caused us to even have the $160,000 left to roll forward into another fiscal year? It seems a lot out of the $726,000 to have that much left.
Sure. So the UPWP is budgeted on a 2-year cycle. So we budget across 2 fiscal years in a 2-year document, but we're only funded on a 1 year at a time agreement. So our UPWP has an amount listed for fiscal year 25 and an amount listed for fiscal year 26. NDOT gives us all of the money for 25 from everything previous and the full amount from 25. So we get the full amount available to us. We got the full amount available to us in 25, which was more than we put into our UPWP. We had the second additional part put into the second year, fiscal year 26. So we budgeted across those 2 years, but NDOT gave us a 1-year monetary agreement for the full amount available in 25.
Okay, let me say it then in the opposite direction. Then am I short for state fiscal year 26 if I don't get new money coming in from the feds? How long will the $160,000 last? I mean, somewhere something's
Yeah.
given. I mean,
For sure.
and I'm just
Yes.
trying to figure out the exposure that we have. So let me say this in a different way. How long will the $160,000 last us? Is that really only going to last us July, August, and September?
We estimate the 160,000 can get us through November, maybe all of December. It'll be somewhere in that time frame. If the additional funding that we've programmed does not come from NDOT, then an amendment to the UPWP will be required.
And so I just want us on notice to have an understanding here then. Does it mean CAMPO goes away because there's no money for CAMPO? Because none of the match that any of the organizations are putting in would cover CAMPO.
Correct.
Okay.
The regulations, however, for metropolitan planning organizations do not go away.
No funding, no get. So I just think we need to be proactive and ready. What I don't want to see is we're here in November and December going, uh-oh, things are changing or things are happening and we have no ability to react.
Sure.
So I
Yes,
guess that's all I
we're-
really want to
we're-
put on the record.
This is step 1 of us being able to react because
At
the
all.
alternative was the standard agreement and we get no funding until the feds
No,
approve. Yeah.
I get,
So-
I'm just warning us all that, I just want to be honest, Carson City's not going to carry the other 2 entities if this, right? Because in essence, that's what starts going away. So it's important that we have all of us on the page together, recognizing that this has to be tracked and followed and should be here sooner than later. So, thank you.
Is
That
it
makes
looking like
sense.
the funding isn't coming through?
I don't
No,
know.
Is
it's
it-
not.
okay,
It's not
it's-
looking that.
We're
This is a-
anticipating getting the funding.
Yes.
I hope so.
Yes. The USDOT, and I mentioned to Commissioner Novak, the USDOT recently put in a budget request for fiscal 26 in line with the budget issues and processes that have been going on in Washington for the last couple of months. And it projected an increase of 2.5% in line with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So there's nothing indicating that we've seen to this point that would say the funds are eliminating or even decreasing. But as we all know, there's potential for change at the federal level.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. These agreements are always interesting to work through every year with the carry forward and different things. So good job to staff for working through this in a creative way with NDOT. Thank you.
And I want to note too, I appreciate NDOT working with this. I know not all the other MPOs are doing this type of agreement, so I appreciate NDOT taking the time and working with us through this amendment process.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And Mr. Chair, if I may add, thank you, Mayor, for your questions too. As Chris indicated, there's no indication right now that the funding's not coming. And I spoke with Deputy Director Sandra Rosenberg about this. She thought the agreements always had this language in it and didn't realize that it wasn't in there. And basically it's just cleaning it up because if the federal dollars aren't there and we don't have it saying that, you know, if they haven't come yet and we have to use state funds to reimburse, we have a lot of grants and it's been dictating a lot of our funding as well. And so we're just saying that it'll be reimbursed once the funding's obligated. And I believe in the agreement, it talks about like how many days you have to put in the, you know, the request and that kind of stuff. So I can't take credit. I didn't work with Chris, our staff did, but I will pass that along. And if there's any alarms that I find out about, I will definitely share that with Chris and the board.
Thank you.
I think we all agree it's more complicated than it should be, but that's the reality of this program and dealing with Congress and administration as well. Okay. Do I have any public comment on this item at all? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, I'll ask for a proposed motion.
I'll move to approve the amendment as presented and to authorize the transportation manager to sign the amendment as well as future amendments to extend the time for performance or approve funding changes not to exceed 10% of the present agreement amount.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second?
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. We're on to item 6A, the Transportation Manager's Report. Chris, this is yours again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Martinovich. I wanted to give a board quick update on our RTP, Regional Transportation Plan outreach. We've been meeting with a variety of agencies and community organizations, gathering different input. Our survey is still open and available for those who haven't taken it. There are flyers around town. It's available on our website as well. We've had great meetings with NDOT and Lyon County, hopefully is coming up, Douglas County earlier this week. We've been meeting with Central Federal Lands and other agencies who have land and stakeholders in our region. So they've been good meetings. We've also been meeting with some of the community organizations regarding transit and transit needs and transit services and ways we can share and cooperate. So we'll have that feedback that'll help us inform some of the projects and some of the priorities we bring back to the CAMPO board going forward. As I mentioned, we are continuing to monitor changes in federal regulations affecting not only budgets, but a variety of programs and rules. USDOT is changing a variety of rules across all of the funds, and we're waiting to see if those rules are going to be very much different than they've been in the past. But right now, we're sort of in a wait-and-see game to see how funding regulations for funds like STBG funds or transportation alternative funds may or may not change. But previous rules have been rescinded, and so we're waiting for new guidance from the Federal Highway Administration and the USDOT on the use of those funds. Right now, it's still business as usual. We're still plugging away, and we've had no indication that any funds are being pulled or withheld, or we're still going forward at this point. USDOT is continuing to release new grants and new grant opportunities, which is a good sign that there's still, a desire to build transportation infrastructure. So that still is moving forward. I wanted to note, I appreciate the board's input, but the next regular meeting will be on July 9th at 4:30 p.m. in this room. So we'll have business as usual for our July 9th meeting Wednesday evening. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to 6B. Rebecca?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you know me at all, you'll know that Safe Routes to School has been near and dear to my heart. I have been an advocate for that since 2000, so don't judge me on my age. But I just want to mention that our Safe Routes to School program has been partnering with Carson City, and I want to thank you for that. We have a program this year that is an art contest, and it's active right now. The contest is inviting Nevada, all of Nevada's school children, to participate K through 12th grade and submit original drawings to raise awareness of road safety. I don't know if you've seen it, but RTC Washoe did something similar for just their school district, and they have a few buses wrapped with children's art, and it's really a powerful message. Yes, I think they have 2 buses. It's important that we involve this demographic into safety, because we know if you learn safety early on, then you'll have it through your life. That's the goal with Safe Routes to School. And we're looking forward to the artwork. I believe they're collecting everything through September 15th, but I can confirm that and let you know if I had the wrong date. The grand prize winners will be featured in Carson City on a mural here in Carson. So they could win it. They could be from anywhere in the state, but the mural will be here, which I think is pretty cool. And the winners will also receive a prize. You can find more information on the contest if anybody's watching this on YouTube and not here at our website at bicyclenevada.com. And we also have it on our Twitter account. And I hope that all of you with kids, grandkids, nieces and nephews get involved. I also want to mention that our strategic highway safety plan is a data-driven plan aimed at reducing fatalities and serious injury crashes. I'm sure you've heard about it. We're pretty active in trying to publicize that and have a lot of different task force that I know Carson City is a member and represented on. In fact, today, your traffic engineer, Casey, was in a meeting we had. It was a 3-hour meeting, I think. I did leave a little early, so thank you for sticking it out. And they were working on updating our newest plan. The plan needs to be completed and in the governor's hands by the end of the year. They've already done some workshops in the south, and so this one was up here in the north. The plan will be for 2026 through 2030, and it's, like I mentioned, underdeveloped, and we'll finalize and get it to the governor's office. So I also want to encourage anybody interested in this to be on one of our task force. They meet every other month. They have several from vulnerable road users, motorcycle safety, and that's this year's plan. I don't know what they're going to be looking at in the updated plan, but there's a lot of opportunities for involvement. And if anybody wants to be involved, please let me know. The last part of my update is about our highway maintenance projects in Carson City. I want to give a shout out to our maintenance staff. I didn't realize this, but they perform nearly 75 different highway maintenance duties. I guess they don't have any boredom, right? That's a lot of fun things for them to do. And it varies from snow plowing in the winter to crack filling and roadside erosion repairs, and that happens more frequently in the summer. Last year, our crews excavated and reestablished roadside ditches on 23 miles of US 395 and I-580 in Washoe Valley. They're also back at it this summer. So in recent weeks, you may have seen them out. They've been regrading highway shoulders and ditches on I-580, also at Lakeville Hill on 395A near South East Lake Boulevard. And they repaired roadside erosion and reestablished the drainage channels in that area. This month, if you haven't already seen them, they're going to be regrading and improving the US 395 median near Topsy Lane and the median of northbound I-580 Carson City Freeway from Clearview Drive in the area of the north. So I hope these are good for you guys to hear, and I like that we can help promote our team and they're out here working in this area. So I don't have anything else, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
I've got a couple. Any status on the HSIP funding? We're still
Yes.
waiting?
Yes, thank you. So for those that don't know that, HSIP is our Highway Safety Improvement Program. We had a call for projects and Carson City put in a few, I think three? Oh, phew, my memory's working. Last Friday, our team presented it to the front office and we asked them to give us a little bit more information. So they are working on reformulating that memo. They'll be getting it to us and we'll be making a decision. We have a really large front office budget meeting on Monday, and I think it's also going to be contingent upon that. So stay tuned a little bit longer. And I really hate that because I know you guys are all chomping at the bit to hear. But I was really excited that this was the first time we've done a call for projects in quite a while, and I was happy that you guys put in 3 applications. So thank you for that.
Good. And you mentioned RTC Washoe, and I saw the news this week. They were encouraging youngsters to take the bus. So if you've got a student ID, you can get on the RTC Washoe buses for free.
For free.
So-
Yes, I love that.
We'll see how that turns out.
I wasn't that fortunate when I was a youngster.
Do you know, did they get a grant? How are they funding that? Do you know?
I don't know. I know it's a pilot and they're going to look at it next year and see how it's going. Commissioner Hill I saw her on the news talking about it, and they're really excited because, as you know, if we get, same thing with walking and biking to school, if we start with them young, then they might become lifelong transit users.
Wonder just how they paying
Yeah,
for it,
yeah, I
right?
saw that. Yeah, I think there was a partnership with Washoe County School District, so I
Oh,
wasn't
they
sure
have
how it was
A
really,
partnership?
yeah, how it's really being funded. It's all right, if it works,
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody will be interested.
And I've talked, it's been a while, but I've spoken with your Safe Routes to School coordinator, Scott Bohemier, in the past, and I know here in Carson City, you have several students that are high school students that do utilize your transit service to get to school, so.
But I have funders that I use in my Mayor's Attendance Hall of Fame that give me
Awesome.
money for the Jack bus passes that I hand out at a couple of the schools that don't have a regular bus.
Right, yeah.
But I'm interested if they had a funding source to
Yeah.
meet this need or how they were doing that.
I'm not sure, we could probably ask. If I find out, I'll let you know, though.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And the last thing I'll bring up at this point, legislature ended. Was there anything that you're aware of from the NDOT side that will affect Campo?
That would affect Campo? No, not that I'm aware of. I know I was trying to get an update from Joe Harrington, our communications manager, and he was in Vegas today. But we just had a couple cleanup bills. Last I heard, they didn't get thrown out. They got repurposed and changed a little bit, and we're sitting on the governor's desk to sign, but it was nothing major this year.
All righty, with that, we'll move on to our last item, agenda item 6C. Any other items that are of interest to the Campo community here? Nothing by the board, no mention, nothing, all right. Well, in that case, I will say this meeting is over.
Final public comment.
Oh, yes, okay. Final public comment.
Sorry.
I keep forgetting that last one. All right, do we have any? I said it's mostly staff, so, I'm going, okay. Seeing none, I guess we are over now. Thank you very much.
We are over. And we'll come back in about 5 minutes as RTC. Transportation Commission to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Schutte, Commissioner Novak,
Here.
Commissioner Maloney,
Here.
Commissioner Dotson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. We're now on to agenda item number 3, which is our opening public comment. Do I have any beginning public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to agenda item 4A, which is the minutes of May 14th, 2025. Do I have any corrections? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion for approval.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. We're now on to agenda item 5A, discussion and possible action on the resolution for our 5310 grant application. And Marcus, are you going to give us a briefing on this one?
Absolutely.
You're going to give it a try?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Marcus Myers, Transit Coordinator for Carson City Public Works. On May 15th of this year, CAMPO released a call for projects for FTA Section 5310 funds, which provide funding to enhance the mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities. Approval of this item would allow staff to complete and submit an application in the amount of $200,155 with a local match of $50,039, which will be used to fund capital operating expenses for Jack Assist. It's worth noting that capitalized operating expenses are funded at an 80% federal share, whereas normal operating expenses, such as those provided through Section 5307 grants, are funded at a 50% federal share. Before I pause for questions, I'd like to bring your attention to Exhibit 2 on packet page 27. Near the bottom of the proposed resolution, the adoption date has a printed year of 2023, which should instead reflect the current year, 2025. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Does any member have a question? Ms. Maloney?
I was just curious, sort of building off the discussion at the previous meeting, at the CAMPO meeting, has there been any indication that CAMPO funds, that there will be a delay in reimbursement for CAMPO funds for transit?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Just curious.
I have nothing to further add.
Okay.
Just to understand that the 50,000 in match that's required, are we saying that some of it is at 80-20 and some of it is at 50-50? Because obviously 20% of 200,000 is not 50,000. I can do good math in my head, it'd be 40,000 something. So, sorry I didn't get that to you earlier, right? Because 2 times 2 is 4, so I don't have to go very far to get past that math. So I was wondering, is there some components at different answers? Or,
I think it is a typo. It's 20% is the correct amount. If the dollar amount is incorrect, it's 20% is the match. There is no component of this that is 50-50 match.
okay, so my brain just sitting here looking at it said, wait, that doesn't look right. Okay. Let's see what the resolution says. I don't think it's an issue in the resolution, right? Because we just have to meet the required match.
That
So
is
the
correct.
resolution doesn't have, aren't we lucky? No dollars, right, in the resolution itself? So we're good. And we just won't exceed the match anyway, so we're still good.
Madam Chair, if I may, one moment.
But
Let me just check one thing.
Okay.
yeah, I was just looking at, in the event the 5310 isn't awarded, and then in that case it was the 5307, is that where the 50,000 match would come in?
No, Madam Chair, I'll clarify here. So the CAMPO allocated amount, the federal amount is $200,155. That's not including the match. So the match is on the total amount. So if you were to add $200,155 plus the match of 50,000, that brings us to the total amount. So it's 20% of the total amount is the way they calculated the match. So I feel like that didn't help clarify.
No, because you don't put match on to create match.
That's 20% of the total amount, not
Program.
20% of the federal share. That's standard, the way, yeah.
So Madam Mayor, that 25194, I just did it on my phone.
Is what they're saying.
20% of that is that 50039.
So you're saying you need 250,000 to do the program?
The total amount to use the entire 200,000, we need to bring to the table a total of 250,000.
I guess the way I'm saying it's actually better. You're saying the actual need for the program is $250,194, and that is an 80-20 split.
Correct.
So first
That
you
is-
determine the program need of 250,000.
Yeah.
And then
the-
say,
it's-
okay, the feds will
correct.
participate at 80% of the program need. It's a different way.
Okay.
That I get better. It's not that the grant is 200,000 and there's a 20% match to that. It's the other way around. I need X number of people or X number of whatever, and that program cost you're estimating is 250,000 some odd, 250,194, and then you do the 80-20 split. Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have anything on it? Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back up here then for a motion. Oh, Mr. Dotson, do you have a question or?
No, I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Second. I
Okay.
move to approve resolution number 2025-RTC-R-1.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect. Greg, was that a yes?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry, your head, I didn't catch it. I thought you turned to say something. And that is as noted on the record with the 2025 correction in the resolution, right? Okay, just making sure. We will then go to agenda item 5B, which is discussion and possible action on a resolution for an FTA Section 5339A program to CAMPO for the purchase of a transit vehicle for $145,859, including a required 15% match estimated to be $21,579, and a request to CAMPO. That one reads good. And request to CAMPO to submit a competitive 5339B bus and bus facility program application for $111,141 with the Regional Transportation Commission providing the required 20% match. Marcus, is there any highlights of this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Marcus Myers, Transit Coordinator. Again, on May 15th, CAMPO released a call for projects for FTA Section 5339 funds, which provide funding for bus purchases and bus facility improvements. Approval of this item would allow staff to complete and submit an application in the amount of $122,280 with a local match of $21,579 for a total amount of $143,859. These funds would be used to purchase an ADA-compliant transit vehicle, which will replace the current vehicle that will meet its useful life likely in fiscal year 2027. Unfortunately, however, this 5339A grant application alone would not cover the full cost of an ADA-compliant transit vehicle. Because of this, staff is also requesting approval from the RTC to provide $22,228 in local match to CAMPO for a Section 5339B competitive grant application, which would be used to cover the remaining cost of the vehicle. Before I pause for questions, I'd again like to bring your attention to Exhibit 2 on packet page 46. Near the bottom of the proposed resolution, the adoption date has a printed year of 2023, which should instead reflect the current year, 2025. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
And Madam Chair, Chris Martinovich, I'll note that I see the confusion with the prior item. I think we can make that consistent
Yes.
across these.
Thank you. Yeah, this one reads really well. Thank you. Okay, is there any questions? Pretty straightforward, other than we don't have enough money. So we would be providing match for them. Is that other funding available, though, that we're going to ask to be able to fill the void?
The 5339B, yes, it is a competitive grant, so we're hopeful, but we don't know for sure that it.
Well, what if we don't get it? Then we don't have the ability to buy this vehicle, right?
I'll let Chris take
What
that
it
one.
means.
Madam Chair, we would program the vehicle purchase as part of our 5307 available funding for the next application. So we have available funding through a different program that could fund the remaining cost of this vehicle at the same match.
In a different application, in a different,
A different
Agenda
grant,
item,
it would be a different grant for our 5307, which is our standard apportionment that comes directly to us. It doesn't require action by this board to apply for those.
and we're doing this because we want to utilize the 5339 funds?
Correct.
Is that part of the?
Yeah.
It's hard to understand, but there's like a hierarchy and we have all this grant money with different years. And so you're trying to use up the oldest first and all these other kind of,
So this
and
was
balances that might be hanging out on some and all that.
we have the 5307 funding that we would use if we weren't awarded this funding is used for operating, it's used for staff, it's used for services and supplies. So it has other uses other than vehicle purchases, but a vehicle purchase is one of the eligible expenses on that, whereas 5339 has a much more narrow usage as to those bus and bus facilities. So we're targeting that one in this case.
No, it makes sense. Okay. Anybody else? Any questions? In case that all didn't make sense to everybody, is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back up here for a motion. Ms. Schutte.
I move to approve resolution number 2025-RTC-R-2 and to request that CAMPO submit a section 5339B grant application with the RTC providing the 20% local match for the purchase of the transit vehicle as discussed with the
Resolution.
corrections to the resolution.
I will second that.
I have a motion and a second for approval with the correction to the resolution. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect that was unanimous. We'll move to agenda item 5C. This is a discussion-only item. It's a presentation on our 2025 Carson City Pavement Performance Model Update for our roads in the community. Chris, you're gonna take us through this?
Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. Wanted to provide the RTC an update following the CAMPO survey of regional and local roads in Carson City and understand how it may or may not have changed following that survey over the long projection to 2050. So as a quick reminder here, Carson City currently maintains 287 paved centerline miles of road. 83 miles are regional roads, which are collectors and arterials, and 204 miles are local roads. We measure our pavements, as this board knows, using our pavement condition index, or PCI, on the scale shown here with the different colors representing the different levels: good, satisfactory, fair, poor, very poor, serious, and failed. And we can model this analysis, and the projection through our software called Paver, which is our pavement asset software that looks at a variety of items, but in addition to pavement condition, can project future pavement condition and run different scenarios based on the existing and future conditions. So our network conditions following the CAMPO survey are shown on the pie chart here as well as in the table. Regional roads stand as of December 2024 at 69, local roads have a PCI of 55, and the citywide average is a PCI of 60. And that's depicted in the colorful pie chart shown on the screen. This is down slightly from our previous survey, and again, down slightly from the 2017 survey. Looking at the report card itself, the green arrows here on the screen represent the physical in-field surveys that were conducted. The other columns are projections, again, using our Paver database. And so you can see the change over time going back to 2015 through 2024, a decrease of 8% over that 10-year period on all city roads as an average. So we take that analysis and we look at our future condition. And to do that, we have what are called pavement performance curves that are typical in the life of a pavement. And similar to that table I showed Here, this is a very theoretical, generalized curve. These are now actual curves for Carson City's pavements. And there's two tables, and it's based on the type of oil that's used in the pavement itself. They're called a non-modified or a polymer modified oil. And the difference with the difference in the oils, polymer modified oils provide a higher temperature range. They're better at low temperatures, they're better at higher temperatures than non-modified oils. So they provide more flexibility or more rigidity, more flexibility in cold temperatures, more rigidity in high temperatures from thermal cracking, shrinkage cracking, deformations. You'll see those bumps and lumps in the pavement when it gets hot, especially in hotter climates. You can see those. So that's the difference in the two graphs there. Has to do with the makeup and the material that's used in the asphalt. The majority of Carson City's roads are non-polymer modified. Newer roads, as we reconstruct and we build new ones, are all polymer modified. So we're phasing out the polymer modified or non-polymer modified and moving to a polymer modified pavement, which is also what NDOT uses on their roads for the state. The dashed line on both of these graphs represent the old model, the previous model up until our most recent survey. And so that's how we were projecting roads to deteriorate up until our recent survey in 2024. We've got the survey data, we input that into the paver database, we analyzed all the different road segments, in addition to which ones are polymer modified and which ones are non-modified, and we projected out new performance curves for the different types of roads. In addition, new this year, we've added a curve for and split out the difference between collectors and arterials, those regional roads, versus deterioration of local roads. And so we can see some differences here. The first thing we can see is the curves are generally flatter than they were previously. We're still kind of ending up in the same point, but they're deteriorating slower over time. They're not seeing that big cliff when they're newer at that 10-year range. We're also seeing that local roads, specifically the non-polymer modified, which is the majority, tend to deteriorate slower than the regional roads. And that may be a factor of a lot of things, but traffic may be one of those factors that could be influencing the deterioration rate of our local roads. From our polymer modified side, there's not a lot of difference. Again, we don't have a lot of data points on polymer modified local roads. We don't have that many yet. But as we were to start getting new ones, either through development or through reconstruction of city dollars, we would have more and better data over time. So these are the kind of the high level detail that goes into projecting pavement deterioration over time, and these have been updated to more accurately reflect the way pavements are deteriorating here in Carson City over that time. So when we do that, when we use those new curves and we project out, we see that regional roads in 2050 are projected to be at a 51, local roads 26, and a citywide average of 35. And then again, looking at the pie chart, this is what that pie chart looks like. The results aren't significantly different than previous results and reflect, our continued deterioration of roads as we've been discussing at this board for a number of years now. Looking at the report card over time, you can see the deterioration rates for different thresholds in different years. Again, these are projections, and as we do physical surveys, we have more data and we can update those projections going forward. From an annual need perspective, it's still exceeding the $20 million mark per year to maintain current condition, but we are seeing, we did see slightly better PCI, but that's offset by slightly higher costs. So there's sort of a balance there, and we generally are ending up in the same area we were projecting in the past. But again, future surveys will continue to inform our model and get more accurate as we go forward. So that's what I wanted to highlight today. It's related to our next item as we select our roads for preservation and reconstruction. I do want to note for anyone who wants to see their individual street and what the PCI is, this QR code will take you directly to the map that's available on our website, and you can look and zoom into the street network. I'm happy to take questions and answer questions as I can.
Go ahead.
It sounded like the polymer modified is a step forward. Are the private developers using that on the new roads that become part of the network, or are they using the older oil?
I believe they're using the new polymer modified oils.
That's the only question. Ms. Shudi?
I was, excuse me, I was just wondering, the projections and the reference to the 20 million, or still need the 20 plus million a year to maintain the current level of service. Is it possible to get a projection based on additional monies, let's say, assuming that we were able to get a 1/4 cent sales tax passed, so on the ballot and passed, so that people could see exactly how that money would be used, could be used, and the actual benefit, whether it's the preservation, the maintenance, however. But then I think it would be really helpful. In other words, what can we do with a smaller budget, not the 20 million, but something smaller? And how would that impact the deterioration rates? So I would just request that kind of information if possible.
Yes, thank you. I think, I know previous versions of this report that were attached to this agenda item have included different budget and funding scenarios. So I think my short answer is right now I'll refer you to those past versions and appendices and documents there. Could we run additional scenarios? We certainly could. And if this board would like that information, I'm happy to bring that forward. Right now, we're not doing a detailed analysis on anything at the moment. We're not doing a deep dive into what-if scenarios. That is something we want to bring back and revisit with all of you in the future, and perhaps later this year when we discuss the V&T bond and how those payments are going, maybe that's an opportunity to kind of rediscuss that. But I'm happy to bring it forward. I just wasn't planning to bring that forward in the near term.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be in the near term. It's more of planting the seed of, for potential ideas. And, just look at something more directly in terms of how can we help get our roads fixed in a way that is palatable.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Ms. Maloney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, could you go back to the chart with those graphs with the polymer versus non-polymer? So when I look at this, I look at the first 5 years, it's clear that the polymer modified performs better, no doubt. The second 5 years up to 10 years, it's still way better. But when you get out to 30 years, you could argue that it's pretty much the same. The normal human is not going to be able to see the difference between roughly 30 PCI and 28 PCI, right? And if you go back to 25 years, it's kind of the same, right? Polymer's a little bit better, but will the average driver feel it? Maybe not. And so my question is, can you still buy non-modified asphalt, and what is the cost difference? In the first 10 years, it may look newer it may be great, but over the long haul, if it's roughly the same, how much are we spending on polymer modified that could be potentially saved?
Sure. A couple of points to your questions. The first point is polymer modified is only slightly more expensive than non-modified. It's something everybody carries. It's readily available pretty much through the summer months. It's less available in the winter months. But you can still get non-polymer modified. You can still get polymer modified. There's no issue in availability for overall. In terms of what we're seeing in the graph, we're not sure. There's not a lot of polymer modified pavement that's that old. So we don't have 30 years of data to support polymer modified at this point. What we have is 30 years of data for non-polymer modified. We know how those behave, but we don't know how the polymer modified behaves over that 30-year period. So I think through additional data collection over time, we'll have a better understanding as what is the benefit. I know driving on roads, this is a personal observation. When I drive on NDOT roads that have used polymer modified for a longer time, they have less cracking overall than roads of a same age here in Carson City. And you can see that on I-580, anywhere you drive between here and Reno, that some of that pavement is approaching 10, 12, 15 years old, and there's no thermal cracking.
Right.
And so there's definitely benefits to the polymer modified pavements. And I just don't know that these graphs are fully reflective of that older longer-term use of polymer modified pavements.
I really appreciate you explaining that. It should be noted for the record that UNR and Carson City is advanced when it comes to these asphalts. We're some of the best in the world. And so I appreciate the explanation on the data. Thank you, Chris.
Anybody else? Greg? No, oh, you're passing. You're waving at me. Okay, that was a pass sign. Okay. All right, it's not an action item, so we don't need any public comment, which can actually come up on the next item anyway. So agenda item 5D is the action to look at our fiscal year 26 projects for Performance District 3. Casey, what did you do with all this data from the last item to help us our informed decision here, right? Okay.
Lots of things, as it turned out. All right, thank
it's
you, Madam.
good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Casey Sylvester, Transportation and Traffic Engineer. All right, I'm here with Chris Martinovich, the Transportation Manager, and we're presenting on the evaluation and selection of District 3 pavement projects. Ah, good call. I'm checking all the buttons. All right. So we're talking today about the evaluation and selection of District 3 pavement projects. Staff evaluated roads following processes in the 2024 to 2028 Pavement Preservation Plan. This process applies to both regional and local roads and prioritizes both preservation and rehabilitation projects. We use a specific data-driven process, same as we used for District 2 last year. Staff evaluate districts by year, and this cycle is District 3. Now to Chris to talk about the budget.
Thank you, Casey. I'll highlight this one slide here. This is the fiscal year 26 transportation project budget. It's broken out through various funding sources. The blue is the RTC fuel tax. That's the two blue items are the RTC fuel tax. That's the 9-cent tax we have on gasoline, as well as the 5-cent diesel tax. The green is the infrastructure, the V&T infrastructure sales tax. That's the remainder after the 1/8 cent, remainder of the 1/8 cent after the bonds are paid for the V&T railroad reconstruction. And the purple is the waste management franchise fee that's collected through waste management. So in total, this was approved, recommended by the RTC and approved by the Board of Supervisors for the fiscal year 26 budget as shown here on the screen. It also includes additional funding to be rolled forward from prior fiscal years into the fiscal 26 budget. A couple of things to note here is the V&T funding must follow the approved plan of expenditures, which directs all of the funds to regional roads. At least 5/9 or 5 of the 9 cents of the RTC gas tax is intended to be used on regional roads only. Diesel tax cannot be used per code on federal or state-owned roads, Carson City roads only, but the other funding sources can be used on either local or regional roads. So we have $4.63 million available in fiscal 26 for projects.
Thanks, Chris. The process takes a variety of data to select road segments, including PCI, traffic volumes, road classification, and others. This process is applied to both regional and local roads. Regional roads are roads classified as collectors and arterials. See Exhibit 2 for the complete procedure. The evaluation includes 9 steps: performance district, PCI data collection, treatment, history, PCI projections, classification split between regional and local roads, segment proximity, data analysis, which was discussed a little bit on the last slide, and finally, cost estimating and grouping of segments. This map is step 5, and it's the highest risk and worst PCI segments. These 15 regional routes are the at-risk and worst PCI segments that made it to step 8. As you can see, some of these routes are near 75, on the verge of needing mill and overlay. Some are on the verge of needing full rehabilitation, around the 55 to 60 range, and some of them have very low PCIs. Upon completing data analysis, that list was pared down to 4 regional preservation segments and 4 regional rehabilitation segments. These 17 local routes are the at-risk and worst PCI segments that made it to step 8. Upon completing the data analysis, that list was pared down to 4 local preservation segments and 8 local rehabilitation segments. Staff then grouped similar adjacent segments into projects and created a cost estimates for each of them. There were a total of 8 regional and 7 local projects created. So just to kind of point to some of these projects are the same segments combined. They're on the same road, such as Fairview Drive. So this project creation is from the 5th Street roundabout up to US 50. Then this next project on this list is Bud Highway and a segment of Airport Road. So we kind of combined when it made sense. Another one worth pointing out here is Racetrack Road area, which includes the entirety of Racetrack Road and the roads in the neighborhood that are in the northwest segment, because those are the ones that were prioritized as part of the process. Based upon the available regional road budget, staff recommend these 4 projects. Fairview Drive North project, which is from the 5th Street roundabout up to US 50. Bud Eye Way project, which is the entirety of Bud Eye and the section of Airport Road that is from Bud Eye to 5th Street. The Clear Creek Avenue project, which is Clear Creek Avenue way on the south and the blue in the map there. It's the blue segment at the bottom of the map, and it goes from the frontage road at Carson Street /395 over to Snyder. And the South Edmonds Drive Rehabilitation Project. This is another one where we combined 2 different segments that have different treatments, and we have Edmonds all the way from Snyder up to Fairview. So the total cost of all these regional projects is $3,602,000. For local roads, staff recommend 2 projects. This is the Hells Bells Marsh Road Preservation Project, which goes from Hells Bells at 5th Street all the way around to its end at Marsh Road, and then Marsh Road from that intersection down to 5th Street. And the preservation project at Racetrack Road that I mentioned on a previous slide that goes from Snyder all the way, it goes from Bigelow all the way over to Center, and includes also the roads within the northwest segment of that neighborhood for a total local road cost of $954,000. Now back to Chris for the summary.
Thanks, Casey. So just to summarize on the budget again, we had $4.6 million. We're recommending that we apply all of the waste management, 360, added to the 580, and apply that to local roads, which leaves us $14,000 short. So we would use a portion of that 2.6 in the dark blue to fund that. All of the V&T funding is proposed to go to regional roads, the projects there in pink in accordance with the plan of expenditures. Total available or total budget for the 2 regional roads and local roads is broken out there by project in the pink and the yellow for a total budget amount of $4.55 million, which leaves us around $77,000 in available funding. I want to note that these are our cost estimates, and we have been seeing a large fluctuation in prices as of late on a variety of projects. Our costs are a few months old at this point. We haven't opened bids in a couple of months. The last one we opened was Menlo Drive, and that was pretty positive for us. But prior projects were seeing increases in costs. So we took our best step, and we'll do what we can here to fund these projects. At this moment, we think we have the available funding, but a lot of unsurety. That's not the word I want to use, but a lot of uncertainty. Thank you, Craig, on costs and where they're going from here. And so we've built in some additional contingencies into these projects, probably more so than we have in the past projects, but we've also built in contingencies in past projects and seen some cost increases. So doing the best we can, but this is what we have available to us at this time.
All right, so the next steps, we're going to finalize the scopes of work. We're going to work with the utility, stormwater, sewer, and so on and so forth. The finalized scope on those projects will be combined with them. Set up the projects and then design. We'll begin in the fall with construction following next summer, and then for the rehabilitation projects, 2027 through 2028 for construction. And that's all.
Okay, I have a question. Not on my glasses, but I'm trying to do it. It really looks at going backwards on the other slide from the other presentation, but here's my question. Can you tell me the PCI and the potential cost? Because I think I'm missing it on this, or I didn't see it selected. But if I'm driving around and looking at roads and things that I would think might really come to the top of a list, right? I go, wow, this road's in really bad shape. So Empire Ranch from Highway 50, you turn on to Empire Ranch, and that road is, what do you guys call it? Gatored? I don't know. Thank you. I would go with horrible. That might, so I'm just trying for the public to understand why didn't, so Empire, right? All the way down, but.
About a third of the way down. There's two Empire Ranch segments. That makes it confusing. But from Carter Avenue to Highway 50 East is the segment you're referring to, I believe, PCI of 18.1.
So here, it is horrible. We are in the horrible. I wasn't wrong on, that was a good word. But why isn't that one rising to the level? Does it not have enough traffic? Why didn't it make the list, I guess, for, it made it through the step 7, but why didn't it make it as to, we're really gonna have to do something? Because I see that road really close to gone. So is that why? Because it's so far gone?
Well, I think there's a couple factors on this. And so to answer a couple of your questions, you asked about traffic volumes. We don't have traffic volume data on most of our local roads. And so that was not a valuation factor for a local road. And so it was not factored in for this particular one. But there are a number of factors that we're looking into, including its connectivity. So it's right next to US 50 and it gets extra points for that. And as we combined all those factors, it did make this short list, but you're correct that it did not carry forward. And to be certain, I would have to pull, I mean, there would be a lot of factors involved in it, how not just that it didn't, it's not that it didn't rate well, it's that there's other roads that also rated higher. And so there's a lot of factors involved in that. And so we're looking at safety. I think that this section of road did not have a safety issue, and that was one of the factors associated with that. And so there's a number of factors that could cause that. Do you have anything you want to add on that, Chris?
Well, did any road make it that's got under
Well,
30 PCI? I mean, is there,
Casey, can you go to a couple of slides where
yeah,
there's
I'm
this
trying to
next one?
catch on that.
So this is the prioritized list. The bottom part is prioritized list of local roads. And one of the things we look at is available funding. And
South End,
available funding for
750.
several of these is just not there. The highest ranked road for local roads from a reconstruction standpoint is Desatoya Drive. It has a PCI of 26, $3.5 million to reconstruct that road.
It's the whole thing.
We looked at breaking up into blocks, and it's still $1.5 million for, dividing it up into segments. And so when we have the available budget of $4.6 million per year, it's a matter of how many roads can we do on an annual basis. And our goal as staff, and this board can direct us otherwise, our goal as staff is to keep the good roads good and preserve as much of the infrastructure as we can for as long as we can. Could we reconstruct Desatoya Drive? Could we reconstruct Empire Ranch Road? Could we reconstruct Sheep and Bighorn? Because that was the worst PCI. PCI of 9. There's dirt coming through. Yes, we could do that. And if you'd all like to do that, we can certainly do that. But we looked at prioritizing the good roads and preserving them first over reconstruction of limited segments given the available dollars.
Chris, getting back on Empire Ranch, that's part of or adjacent to the NDOT repaving project that's coming up at some point, right? I don't know if we've ever
It's
looked
adjacent.
into adding onto the NDOT contract to do city streets that tie into them. I mean, is that a possibility as long as you have the money? Have we ever done that before?
I don't know if we've done that before, and we have not investigated that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, there's a big
Makes
paving
sense,
project
though.
coming by.
Yes.
And just on the other side where Arrowhead comes in, if there's anything, I guess right in the intersection they would do. But if there's a little work that we want to add into that contract, it's probably worth talking about, but I don't know if we have extra money for it, but just an idea for you guys.
So South Lampa Damon Drive, South Edmonds Drive, Project 3. How much is that one? 851, right? But it didn't make it on the final list, or it did?
It did, and jumping back over
And
to
the
this
other one
slide
that
that
I'm
shows
talking about would have been 750.
South Edmonds, we combined the two South Edmonds projects
Oh.
going back to, sorry, I'm jumping around too
No, I'm
much.
trying to get the math too, and where you're going and what we approved off of which, yeah. It's like, what?
So at the very top section, number 4, South Edmonds Drive, Damon to Snyder is 489. And then, as you said, number 3 on the second section is South Edmonds Drive from South Lampa to Damon. So we combined those into one project that's 1.3 million. And so that did make the list.
Mhm. And again, because it makes sense, I really am trying to understand when all I can do is like a common individual that drives around town, right? And are we, so why did we select, I guess that's my better way to phrase it. Why am I fixing Damon and South Edmonds versus this Empire Ranch? There's certainly more homes in the Empire Ranch arena. There are more homes than access, but is it a more of a cutoff and more, area? I'm just trying to understand. Well, right.
We do score regional roads higher than local roads, and so there's more priority that goes to regional roads, and Edmonds being a regional road
Right.
gets more priority than Empire Ranch.
And so that's what I said. I think it's important, though, that the public understands what's forcing the scoring and the decision, and that we're using data to do this, because I think that all of us could drive around town, and I'm just being honest with you, there's no doubt in my mind which road is worst. And so when you live in areas, and I'm selecting local roads, but part of it is, okay, but we're doing a connection on a regional, so we're gonna go ahead and grab that one because it makes more sense. I'm already mobilized. I already have everything out there, so it makes more sense to get that side street versus starting over on another area of town and losing, I don't know how much in the mobilization costs. But that there isn't a magic to saying it's, the first issue is every road under 20 PCI. I guess that's not one of our criteria, is to say all roads under 20 PCI get first priority.
I will note that we do consider the worst roads, and it's a percentage of the worst percentage of roads as part of the scoring that goes actually into the actual physical scoring that comes out of that list. So we are considering the worst roads. Oftentimes, the worst roads are some of the most expensive to fix, and it's difficult for us to do anything other than that one individual segment.
Right. Versus I can have an impact on, so how many miles, let's look at it in another way. How many miles under this projection model will we be impacting?
All right, let's see here. So how many roads are we doing with our recommended projects?
How much mileage do I get?
I believe I have this in my
Yeah.
notes if you give me a second.
No, it's
Casey's
fine.
point was no's, but the total mileage of the projects is listed here on the screen. So on a local road standpoint, we're doing 2.6 miles of local road preservation. On the regional road, we would be doing 1, 2, 3,
You're like,
about
shoot, I
5.
put the word total miles
you
instead
know,
of the answer in
about
there.
about 6 miles of regional roads.
Okay. And if we were to look at Empire Ranch and combine all the like you said, or just, what is it, Cascade, for the same amount, I guess that's a good comparison. So if I were to look at number 1 below the yellow, second yellow there, I could do 0.55 and it would take my whole 3.4 million. But I think this is important that the public understands what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so while we recognize there might be a worse road somewhere, we're trying to make the money have better impact or more impact. So we can affect 6-point-something miles for the same amount that we would have almost for a half a mile. And I think that's important to note for people to understand. Ms. Maloney?
I have a couple questions. On Desatoya, the estimate for that, guys, did you remove, or the sidewalk and ramps that we did as part of that other grant, that already reduced the cost estimate for this project, is that correct?
Yes.
Good. So staff are planning ahead, just for the record, and they've already tried to reduce the cost of that Desatoya project. It's just that the asphalt there is a bummer.
Yeah, another bad,
Thank you.
or horrible, I think Greg's word was, horrible. Yeah, we might go with horrible there.
My next comment has to do with Clear Creek Avenue. Not a lot of people know, but the tribe has their own tip. So they have access to different pots of federal funding for roads than CAMPO would have access to. And so my question to staff on that is, have you or would you be willing to have a conversation with the tribe to see if that road, Clear Creek, might be a project that we want to help partner or pursue through their tip, because it is a primary access to the community center and the Stewart facility, and that may be an opportunity to free up funds. We've never done that as CAMPO, but they did bring money to the table for the local roads up on the hill as part of that colony roadways up there on the west side. So that might be a way to add an additional project, though I know that's another ask of staff. So I wanted to throw that idea out there.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Maloney. I think that's a unique idea and one we hadn't considered. We do have a good working relationship with the tribe. We're partnering with them on helping them with some design of a project they're doing up in the Oneida area. And so I will definitely bring this up with the tribal folks to see what options we do have. I also know they're in the process of updating their long-range transportation plan, so I'll broach the subject with them as through that avenue as well.
Thank you. And then my third comment, if y'all don't mind, on South Edmonds, should we go forward with that project from Fairview down south? The portion of South Edmonds from Fairview down to Kuntz, there is a lot of bicycle traffic on there, and it's been discussed for a long time how bikes are on the road. We have school buses that stop there for kids. I know there are some right-of-way constraints, but if there was any way to, maybe it's a restriping for minor narrowing of the lanes to allow more of a shoulder for bikes, I think it's worth looking at in design. Yes, let it go on the record, Lucia supports bikes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dodson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a couple questions. I just can't get over the price tag for a half a mile of pavement on Desatoya.
Yeah, me too.
You know, you're looking at $3.5 million for a half mile of paving. And, you know, I wondered if it was the ADA component of it that was driving it up. Apparently, that's already been addressed.
So we did that.
Is it utilities that are in there? And if it is utilities, I don't think that ought to be looked at in terms of the cost, you know, for these types of projects.
Thank you, Commissioner Dodson. Those are excellent points and good questions. I'll note that Casey mentioned that we have accommodated some of the ADA improvements. We only did 2 of the, I believe, 6 or 7 intersections. So there are a number of other intersections that still require ADA upgrades as part of this project. This project does not include, and none of these cost estimates include, any utility work. That was purposely excluded. We will be seeking utility funding to do things like raising and lowering manholes and valve cans. We've been successful working with our utility divisions, water and wastewater, to get funding to do those items. And we're starting to work with utility companies when we have to adjust their facilities for them to reimburse us since they're under franchise. So trying to limit at those costs for utilities as much as we can from the roadway side. You know, we awarded a contract last year for Winnie Lane. It was 0.3 miles for $1.58 million. So this is very much similar to what we're seeing on our actual construction projects in terms of what it costs now to reconstruct a road.
Yeah, that's pretty alarming to me that, you know, certainly when we look at reconstruction projects and our projections, you know, that's another concern for these things continuing to deteriorate. And we're not addressing any of these failed roads, you know, the ones that are down there. So it's worrisome to me. The other thing I wondered about, and perhaps I should know this, but the allocation of the funding to the local roads. Are you looking at a percentage of the total budget to do local roads now? Or how did you make that split there between the regional and the locals?
There is no set formula. So I'm open to, input from this board as to what that breakdown should be. We generally prioritized 80% of the funding to regional roads, more or less 20% to local roads. There are some limitations in some of the available funding as to what it can be spent on. So that plays a definite part into how much we can spend on local roads. But, if there's other direction, we're happy to consider that for sure.
So before I take any more discussion or anything on this, I think I'm going to go ahead, since we're having such a great, robust discussion, I'll ask Ms. Schutte for a disclosure on this item, please. You're talking too much.
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who is employed by Carson City and is one of the presenters on this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his service with the city, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other resident of Carson City. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict and will be voting on this matter.
Thank you so much. So if we take a look at packet page 116, this kind of lays out what our current policy and pavement management prioritization is. So I think Commissioner Dotson brings up, are there things in here that you think we should be addressing or changing or asking staff to look at differently? Because the one is we have historically on page 120, number 2, that 20% he was discussing has been our practice. I know that the Board of Supervisors, when it was looking at some of the taxes that we were recommending, we wanted to dedicate some of that to local funding so we could have more of an impact and potentially do something like DeSoto, right? Because it's Desatoya, because you look, boy, that one still seems super expensive to me. Not saying you got anything wrong, but it's really hard for me to understand how a half mile is 3.6 million. How much was it that we just spent and closed out on 5th Street with all those ADA? Remember we did a bunch of ADA fixes? How much did we spend on that? Maybe it's not as, I don't know. I just kind of look across to say, boy, this just doesn't make any sense. You're sure we didn't slip a digit somewhere? We spent 2.5?
2.5 million on that East 5th Street project.
Yeah, so where are we at 3.6 on this one? Wow. Maybe there's just more or something we're not
I think one
Seeing
factor
in the map.
involved is that even though this is a local road, it is not a little road. It has on-street parking on both sides, so it's quite wide. It's actually a wider road than Fifth Street is, and so it's more in line on width with what we saw on Winnie Lane, a project that was advertised 2 years ago. And so that kind of reflects part of the cost there as well.
If you look at packet page 138, Menlo was only 0.18 miles, and that was $1 million, or 1.8 million, excuse me, for less than a fifth of a mile.
One of the things I'd like to point out, I'd mentioned to Chris, when you look at the entire roadway network in Carson City, there's roads that NDOT built once upon a time. There's a whole bunch that developers put in, and there's some that Carson City has built. And I think if we had the database to show that the overall pavement section on those roads varies quite a bit. And I'm guessing Desatoya and some of these other local roads were built with a minimum. And we're coming back in now with a newer standard, and that's one reason they do cost so much.
Okay.
So I don't think we want to rebuild to the original teeny tiny pavement section. We like to have something that, as long as we invest the money, it will last. So I think that is one of the big differences here, that, between the regional roads and the local roads, there's a different quality of the pavement we're starting with.
I'm just saying, it'll chew through your money really, really, really fast at 3.6 million for a half a mile. And we were telling people when we were looking at some of the roads on the escalating costs, going from $1 million a mile to $2 million a mile, it's pretty hard to say. I hate to tell you, we're doing a half a mile is 3.6 million. But there is ADA components, some that are left still to do, but it's
Yeah,
like.
there are additional components beyond just the pavement on, a lot of these roads.
Is there anything inside of the prioritizations or anything, though, that you guys saw on packet page 116 through 120 that you wanted to address? Because of that, then they would need to go back and rerun or reassess, or I really think we've overall done a great job at it. But Ms. Maloney?
I mean, in the past, a factor that was considered was the work history, and I know that's in here as listed, and I don't know if that impacted the decision to go back to South Edmonds, but the city invested a significant amount in 2016-17 into rehabilitation of South Edmonds on that portion, and so that may be why we're going back. But if there's a public perception of why are you going back to Edmonds, let's do Empire if that's what this board wants. I imagine that was a factor in that ranking higher.
Yeah, work history is one of the factors. Work history in terms of keeping the good roads good. We've made the investment in, let's preserve that. And also, work history in terms of let's not go back if we were just there our last cycle. Let's think about how we can spread the dollars around. So there's work history sort of on both sides. Let's preserve the infrastructure, but don't keep doing the same road over and over again.
And so is it reasonable to be back onto a road in 7 or 8 years? So if we already did admit, I think it's a valid point for the public that's waiting for their road to get fixed. And so if I'm back on somebody's road and you still haven't gotten to my road, why? I think it's a valid question to ask, and we should be able to stand up and say, we're going to do Edmonds because that's the way we're going to keep that road good, and this one's too far gone. Because I think that's, to me, it's the discussion between Empire Ranch and Edmonds is why are we picking Edmonds versus
A
Empire
lot of
Ranch?
the factors are exactly that, is in, if we let Edmonds fail, then we're at multiple millions of dollars to reconstruct that. And so if we can continue to preserve that versus a road that has already failed, that is the decision to keep the good roads good. And that's the reason we've prioritized it in that manner as staff.
And what was the PCI on the Edmonds area?
So Edmonds is the fourth line, and Edmonds is the fourth to the bottom line. So we have PCIs in 57, and we have a PCI at 75. And as I mentioned earlier, that this project is a split of two different treatment types. So we have the around 75 is it's about to need mill and overlay, but we're going to surface treatment it. And then around the 55 is we're about to be on that point where we're going to have to rehabilitate it. But if we can do a little bit of a mill and overlay now, it'll help us not get below that threshold.
Can I add one more question to that?
Absolutely.
Speaking of South Edmonds, on 107, you mentioned if additional funds are identified, staff recommends that a portion or the portion of South Lampa between South Edmonds Drive and Fairview Drive be added. Is there a likelihood that that could happen? I mean, I think within
One
the
that's at
proximity
26
of,
PCI.
yeah, and that really is, so many people cut through.
Yes,
And just the proximity of the other road work, how is that looking potentially?
Well, I think to your point about proximity to other work, that's one of the main reasons why we've identified it as a good, easy add-on. If Edmonds moves forward, we're already going to be right in there, so it's an easy addition. In terms of the available funding, I've reached out to NDOT Financial Management to get a summary of our surface transportation block grant funds to see what CAMPO has available to it following, closure of past projects and allocations over federal fiscal years. I have not heard back from them. I've been trying to reach out for them for a couple of months, and I have not heard back. I'm going to continue to pursue that to see what that pot is, and anything that we have in there, we would use toward, regional roads in this district, should there be any available funding. Again, that has to be regional roads for federal dollars. South Lampa is a regional road.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Dotson?
Chris, could I ask on the Empire Ranch area project of $750,000 budget cost, does that include the worst piece there coming off 50 for reconstruction?
That's the section.
I believe it does, and it's a relatively short section.
It's
so
shown as very short.
Yeah, so I think that it is included in there. Then there's some preservation of some other roads that were identified as at risk in that neighborhood just for a slurry treatment.
I don't know, just off the cuff, it seems like that's pretty good bang for the buck. You're talking about just about a mile of treatment area there for $750,000 in an area that, seems to have some pretty good need. Wonder if maybe if you looked at that as a potential project for the local roads, I guess you'd have to at least eliminate one of the projects that are listed there, Racetrack Road or Hell's Bells. I get you pretty close, to that figure of what you're looking at there.
It's definitely an option.
Well, and we just did Fifth Street in front of the school, Hell's Bells, that whole area. We did all of the ramps and really made that nice. So we did a treatment.
We did a
In that
treatment on
area.
Fifth Street in that area. We would
Right.
be doing the Hell's Bells portion behind in the neighborhood, which wouldn't require any ADA. It would just be a preservation of surface treatment and patching.
Would this board be open to taking Clear Creek off of the list and replacing it with Empire Ranch with the hope that we could have some conversations with the tribe and see if there's an opportunity to partner and pursue a separate project on Clear Creek later?
I actually would. So talk to me about Clear Creek. It really is a bad road on Empire. I'm just telling you, it really is.
The discussion, Darren Schultz, for the record, discussion's been really, really good. I think that's a really good idea. We haven't done that. But I do want to just put on the record that we had a bit of a collaboration with the tribe on a sewer side. And they are really concerned right now with their funding through the BIA and the cuts and what's projected in the future. So that discussion is on hold until they get some answers on their side. I don't know if the roadway funding would, if it's the same pot or not, I have no idea. So certainly we'll have that discussion, but I think it's probably prudent to just put on the record that they might be a little apprehensive to move forward, but either way, we would have the discussion. So, thank you.
Yeah, the real question becomes for this board, if I'm looking at Clear Creek, what was its PCI? Sorry, we have to jump back and forth, but I don't know how else to get it done. What was Clear Creek? Okay. 74, and its amount of miles and its cost versus the PCI, the amount of mileage and the correction to Empire. I'm just struggling. Why would I select Clear Creek instead of Empire? What's the factor that's driving you when the other problem with Clear Creek is Carson City's only sections of Clear Creek? I mean, isn't that the road that so-and-so owns this part and so-and-so owns that part? Doesn't mean we don't do what we're supposed to do, right? We're gonna do the Clear Creek on the other side of the road, not in front of Costco, Clear Creek. We're the other side, is what we're talking about here. Right?
Yes, Madam Chair,
Silver
this
Sage
is
to-
Clear Creek on the tribal side between Snyder and the frontage road. So the east side of US 395, that's the portion we're talking about, and we are responsible for maintenance in that
No,
area. and
I
we've-
get it, but why am I selecting that versus?
It's a regional road is the reason. It's a regional road, it has transit service, it has bike and ped connectivity, it's on the 395 bike route. So there's a number of factors
Well, that's what I'm
that
asking.
escalate, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the factors that triggered Clear Creek, and again, it's preserving infrastructure the city has made in the past when we reconstructed that prior. But there's a lot of need, and I think we're having this conversation because of the need.
It's the right thing for us to do, and that's what this is all about, is making as good a decision as we can with the factors and the dollars that we have. So when was the last time I'm struggling not doing the Empire Ranch.
To your comment earlier, Mayor, about spreading the money, and we had just spent money on Fifth Street. The city, a couple of years ago, please correct me, we invested in, I think it was Snyder, there by the community center, right? Oh, center in the tribe by the community center. So we did also go near there recently, right?
Yeah, we reconstructed Center Drive from Snyder to the county line, I want to say in 2023.
That makes sense. That's what I said. So we've been there.
We've been in that area,
And
yes.
what have we done in the last 8 or 10 years on anything around Empire Ranch? Nothing.
Given that those are all local roads, nothing.
Nothing, right.
We are prioritizing a project Fairview from the Fifth Street roundabout north to US 50, which will be adjacent to that Empire Ranch neighborhood. That's the number one regional road project. I'll say too, for the benefit of this board, Casey and I had days of discussions about how to package these and how to rank them, not so much how to rank them, but how to package them into projects and allocate the funding. And, we struggled with, okay, if we do this, if we put this piece together, if we do
Right.
this, how do we package that together? This was our recommendation. I mean, I'm supportive of any changes you all have, but just know that these decisions aren't easy at your level. They're not easy. It's staff level, and there's a lot of need.
I mean, you guys have a great process, and I think we all agree we wish we had more money. So how do we do these trade-offs? When you do your preservation treatment, say on these local roads, we're in the 73, 75 range right now. How much higher do you think your PCIs would go? Because it sounds like Empire Ranch Road is a valid project, and it's almost like, well, Hell's Bells and Marsh. I drove on that. I said it's not that bad.
Correct.
Well, I'll refer you back to a prior presentation where we, for the pavement condition survey, where we looked at a number of roads and we highlighted a few that were similar condition. And I'll bring up Poole and Dory and Bunch and Snedden in the Airport Road, Carmine Street area, where those were roads, I think they were in the mid 60s, maybe even low 60s in terms of PCI condition. We did a preservation, patching, crack filling on those, same thing we would do here. And we brought them up to PCIs of near 100. So, they makes a significant improvement, for that 5 to 10 year period on the life of that road through the preservation activities.
So when I look at your ranking and try and, okay. So the Empire Ranch one, you scored out as rank 2. Right? Obviously, we've all figured out Desatoya is out. For whatever reason, it's the entire budget. We can't do that half mile for $3.4 million. But you have Empire Ranch then scoring second in your ranking. And the dollars are consistent. So where's Clearview on this one? I'm stuck on number 9, slide 9.
Is
Let's
this
see.
slide 9?
Slide 9's the one where you rank them, right?
Yeah, slide 9 is the local road ranking.
Okay, and so you have the above and the below. So tell me right? Rehab. So the second ranking rehab is the Empire Ranch.
And I would just like to point, oh, no?
Yeah, you can.
The total score for Empire Ranch is lower than any of the preservation segments. And so even though it's second of the rehabilitation, it's 6th overall.
But its money was only $750,000.
Yeah, it's a hard, as Chris
And
was
the
saying, it's a hard place.
preservation
I think
was 800, and I'm just trying to, right? And so I need you to convince me why Empire is out when it costs less money and it would fix a horrible, horrible road. And I think I was trying to get, what am I getting on Clear Creek that I can't save Empire Ranch? What's the factor that made you decide to rank it higher? Maybe that's right. Why'd you go there?
Absolutely. Clear Creek is a regional road. Empire Ranch is a local road. So we prioritize regional roads over local roads.
You also get extra points for transit, and Empire Ranch is way out there with no transit. Right? That's what you said.
That's true. Cost differences, right? We can look at centerline miles.
What do you mean by extra points for transit?
One of the scoring factors is transit, and so if a road has transit, it gets a score. If a road
In
doesn't,
our own internal scoring,
yes, in our
not someone
internal
else's
scoring.
scoring,
Our
our scoring. Okay. It's like, wait, I
I'll
gotta figure
also
that out.
note of, just for discussion purposes, is that the width of the road is not reflected in the center line miles. So these are just pure center line miles of road. Different roads have different widths, and so when we consider cost, the width plays into the cost. A 24-foot wide road is easier to preserve and reconstruct than a 36-foot wide road that has parking on both sides. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think I'll take some public comment and see. It's a shame, the public, that this is where we're picking what roads to fix, and this is where people, and they're not here. But I feel strongly that you can see that we pick it apart. It's not a rubber stamp activity. That's not what this is about. It's about just truly digging in to figure out the why with the limited dollars that we have. But I will take, if you have public comment, come on up, Mr. Costa. Did I hit where you live? Do you live out in Empire Ranch area? No? Okay. Oh, but you got one of those horribles to go with it? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Mark Costa, resident in Carson City. It's the first time I've been looking at this document, and there's a number of concerns with this. I think the public, it's disappointing that not very many people are here tonight because this is where the rubber meets the road. And there's a lot of questions that come up with this. If I understand correctly with what was presented verbally, is that the regional roads are going to be working on about 6 miles. I think it was 6.1. Local roads was only going to be less than 3. So we're working on terms of mileage. More than 2/3 of that is regional roads, which has a higher PCI. And the local roads is what has a lot of concern by people here or by the public. I think looking at the criteria for how these are evaluated or how these are scored, a lot of this, I understand there's a lot of analysis, that discussion that went into this, but it's got to be more transparent for the public here and more quantification. I looked at some of the factors here, or most of the factors. A lot of them are qualitative in nature, which you have to have some qualitative factors, but this needs to be expanded a lot more on that. And it looks like the situation is getting worse in terms of the roads, and particularly with this, with the lack of funds for that. I'm wondering if some of these regional roads, if they can go ahead and wait till we have federal funding available for those, since apparently federal funding is eligible for regional roads, not for local roads. I'm going to go ahead and be blunt and state what some of the things that NDOT, what we had to do when we had some of these roads. A lot of these roads, looking at the PCI of 9 or 13 or something of that nature, we're going to have to be straightforward with the public, and we're never going to have the money to repair these or fix them. From what I'm hearing, what the costs are now, we're going to have to rubbleize them, turn them into rubble or gravel roads, because they're almost, looks like some of them are approaching that area already. And just be frank, we're not going to be able to maintain these roads to 200 plus miles that we have. 2.5 or 2/3 of that roughly is local roads, and the situation's only going to be worse. So I think we have to make some hard decisions here and let the public know what we're doing and why. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other public, but just in case. Okay. So I'll bring it back up here. Is there an appetite for us to just take the recommendations or make some swaps? Ms. Maloney?
I have one more question for staff. Thank you, and I appreciated the public comment. Without derailing this conversation, has staff looked at the alternative construction methods for Empire Ranch Road, of like what we did off of Deer Run with those grindings many years ago that seemed to hold up pretty well? We used asphalt grindings and on those roads off of Deer Run where there's very low traffic, and so some people like them, but some people, there's not a lot of research on how well it holds up, but it has held up on the east side. Is that an option to reduce the cost of Empire, or is it not a good candidate?
We have not looked at that specifically for Empire. We have done that, and we are continuing to do that. The street operations folks do that for specific low-volume roads. For instance, Nichols Lane was recently reconstructed using grindings and a slurry. Harrison Lane off of Airport was recently constructed with grindings and a slurry in the fashion that you mentioned. They with low volumes, they probably last a long time. I'm not sure how they would do with high volumes, and I think we would see some deterioration more quickly than we would on some of the roads that you mentioned. But to directly answer your question, we have not analyzed the cost analysis of that. Part of that has to do with what is the available stockpile of grindings Does Carson City have enough to do that? Do we have to buy that? Purchasing grindings is incredibly expensive. It's a very, very valuable commodity, so everybody wants it. And so I don't know if we had purchase grindings, we'd be any cheaper than doing asphalt paving.
Thank you. I just had to ask that. So to answer your question, Mayor, I would be supportive of acknowledging staff's effort and the good work on this prioritization and replacing Clear Creek with Empire Ranch as presented.
I think I'm there too. What, but open to discussion. I think that's where I'm at too.
Can we go back? So I'm just thinking, what if we switched Racetrack and Hell's Bells and did Empire instead? There'd be a little extra money, but is that a reasonable swap, or is Clear Creek a more reasonable swap, potentially?
I think dollar-wise, Clear Creek's closer.
Is there a
But
greater need?
I mean, again, it's coming back to what do we want to preserve? How many miles are we preserving compared to how many miles we're reconstructing? Are we doing more local roads than regional roads? I mean,
Right.
I can't say that removing those and putting it's hard to say if that one's better or worse, other than what are the priorities for spending money on local
Wish I
versus
could-
regional roads.
There's no way we can see a picture of what the Clear Creek Road that you're talking about looks like.
I don't have a picture unless we were to pull one up on the internet. We
I
could
know, but
potentially
you,
do that, but.
I know, and I think everyone here knows how bad the Empire Ranch Road one is. There isn't any doubt the entire road, that section is nothing but
If,
horrible.
if Clear Creek,
But I wanna know what it
if we
looks like.
didn't do the preservation for Clear Creek, I know in the report that when this comes around in 5 years, what are we looking at?
Well, all the roads we prioritized on slides, I think it's 7 and 9, each of those is at risk. So there's a potential where preservation may not be the right treatment, but it still may be. Maybe it drops to the mid-60s and we can preserve it. We don't know, but these are those roads that are right on the cusp where they could fall to the next level of treatment the next time we analyze this performance district.
That's where my hesitation is on that.
So
just,
if we don't do the other one we're talking about, Empire, in 5 years, we can do just exactly what he said and we can grind it up.
Right.
It has
And
no chance of survival on Empire Ranch. I mean, it's already horrible. I love Greg's word. And I get what you're trying to say, that's our whole discussion here tonight, right? How do we slice that little bit of priority and which thing takes a little slightly higher need? But I'm trying to understand on that Clear Creek section, but we have done work in that area. So we, like you said, we did center. I'm not thinking we have not worked in that general area. And part of me wants to make sure, even the reason that we did transportation districts back a ways ago was to make sure that all the areas of the community could receive treatments, because we tended to keep, I don't want to say picking a certain area, but there was a perception that we were always going to certain areas and fixing their roads and no one else's roads. I think we've done a great job moving into transportation districts and making sure that the entire community is eligible to have roads fixed. And then our discussion becomes regional versus local, right? So that's our next big push. And we have 2 times as many local roads as we do regional, but the regional roads are where you can get federal dollars. We can stretch matches, maybe getting grants. They are where our transit systems are, where our school buses go. You know, there's a lot of issues that come onto a regional road, higher traffic counts, obviously, right? But it doesn't mean there aren't local roads that we need to decide whether we're going to save that road or turn it into, sorry, it's not going to get any treatment, and therefore we're willing to sacrifice that road. And I guess that's where I feel we're at today on this particular road. Are we ready to say we're sacrificing that one? It's not going to get treatment. And that's really what I think we need to decide.
The other option that we haven't discussed is the two portions of South Edmonds. The South Lampa to Damon, that's the north part of the big one, right? And that is on slide 10, that's 851.
Oh, maybe just take off that
So if you
portion.
shorten that road, then all the recommendations could get done plus
something
Empire.
done.
Is that right?
We don't combine the two you're saying that they had for the other, let's see.
Just in the spirit of extending this, it's another option, right?
Right. Oh, yeah, because they put two together.
Right.
Yeah, so Edmonds is the two projects.
I know.
So the Edmonds is the two section of projects. We have the section from Damon to Snyder that's surface treatment. And that total for that portion is $489,000. Then you have the South Edmonds that's from, let's see here. Here we're showing South Lampa to Damon, but this is really from Fairview to Damon is what this segment we estimated out was. And that's for $851,000. And so that section, that's the 851, is the one that's on the point of where it needs to be mill and overlaid because it's about to drop to rehabilitation level. And there's a lot of traffic on Edmonds. And so if you take off that northern section that's more expensive, yes, that dollar amount is very similar and you go and do Empire Ranch instead, but that is a high traffic section that's about to drop below that threshold. And then if you were to take off the surface treatment, we're doing 2 miles for under $500,000.
So how about we put it to you this way? If we told you we wanted Empire Ranch Road, what project would you drop? How about we put it that way and see what happens?
I think.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, what was that?
We want Empire Ranch Road done, what project would you eliminate or change?
I would recommend, my personal opinion would be to eliminate, I'd start with the southern portion of Edmonds. That's where I'd start. And then I would look at Clear Creek.
Okay.
And I could be swayed either one of those direction-wise.
Do we have more chances with Clear Creek? I know that the tribal may have its issues, but since we haven't even opened up a discussion line with them concerning this, may that not be the best choice? And then it comes around in the next round after you've had discussions or?
The other
That has-
item that we, briefly discussed was the available potential federal funds through STBG, through NDOT. Maybe
And that one's
Lampa's,
eligible.
maybe Lampa's not the next one on the list. Maybe it becomes Clear Creek
Right,
or South Edmonds to open that up.
yes,
That's another
because they're
avenue.
eligible.
I get the idea of doing Empire Ranch, and I totally support the idea of doing a reconstruction on local roads because we haven't done one. So, I think Casey and I would be in support of doing that. And if that means Clear Creek or Edmonds fall off the list, then, that's not an issue for us. And I definitely would support that decision. And I think it's a good one.
And Clear Creek has no other project attached to it, where
Clear Creek
Edmonds,
doesn't.
we might get some economy of scale. So now I'm looking between those two and saying which is the better one to pass on.
Sure.
I'm thinking unless we've missed the boat, it's Clear Creek, because we may have other opportunities on Clear Creek that are not available for Empire Ranch.
That is
We cannot
true.
get federal dollars for it. We cannot,
And we
so-
can't get federal dollars for Hell's Bells, and we cannot get
Right.
federal dollars for racetrack.
right? So are we kind of on that message together that we're going to swap Empire Ranch for Clear Creek?
And if by some miracle we can do some preservation of Clear Creek, we can make that happen.
Right. And I don't have any problem with that. If you're able to talk to others, or we can get a grant or other things of that nature, absolutely. Okay. Are we ready for a motion then to do that? We're gonna approve the Performance District 3 projects as presented, with the exception of Clear Creek Road will be swapped out for Empire Ranch Road. For the US 50 portion, to the US 50 portion, because you had a couple of Empire Ranches, right? I can make that, it's fine. Does that work? Is everybody on the same page? Okay.
I will second.
You have a motion and a second. Is there any clarifications or anything needed? Is staff clear on the motion? Just want to make sure.
Staff is clear. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. I want to just commend everybody, staff, everyone. What a great discussion to really, I don't think there was any easy answer, but great job. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 6A, which is the Transportation Manager's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. I have a couple of minor items here. The first item, and it's sort of related to our previous topic, is we are reviewing our bid item list for road construction projects and trying to get more consistent in how we describe bid items and the actions of work. So construct curb ramp, reconstruct curb and gutter, construct asphalt paving. We want to have the same description across project and project, and we've been actively working on that. And that does one major thing in that it allows us to have more consistency of costs and prices going forward. So if we can clean that up, we'll have a better way of estimating projects into the future. The second thing I want to mention in terms of this is Transportation Manager Report is in terms of Safe Routes to School program. We are working with the city of Fernley, who is in Lyon County and part of the Safe Routes to School umbrella for Western Nevada, to do a Safe Routes to School action plan for a couple of their schools using our funding available through our Transportation Alternatives program, with Fernley providing the local match for those efforts. And so we're working with them on the scope and which schools and things like that, but anticipate an agreement coming to this board at some point in August or September for that effort. Also, on the Safe Routes to School front, we have a number of events scheduled this summer with Boys and Girls Club, bike rodeos and such, and including events in Dayton and the Dayton Boys and Girls Club. So Scott's going to be busy. Even though school is out, he has much to do. The last thing I'll mention is that there is no current plan to have an RTC meeting in July. So it'll be a CAMPO only meeting and no planned RTC meeting for July. And that concludes the Transportation Manager's Report.
Okay, thank you. Then our next item, item 6B. Chris, if you could tell us about April street operations and control systems report.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. This, nothing I specifically wanted to highlight on this particular street operations report, other than, again, the number of potholes, 565 potholes filled. That's, basically a quarter of the fiscal year was done in that particular month. So a lot of effort goes into pothole repairs. For spring, a lot of weed abatement along sidewalks and along the edge of the right-of-ways and the edge of the road, continuing with that. On the traffic control systems report, nothing's particular to note other than a lot of work orders were created in April, and they're plugging away on activities across the region that we're responsible for maintenance for.
And are there any questions about the street operations report? Okay, thank you. Then we will move to item 6C.
I have nothing further, but I think Casey has the project status report if you would like.
Thank you, Chris. We have the project status report for all of the active transportation projects in Carson City. We'll start with Roop Street Rehabilitation Project. 60% design is completed, and so 90% will begin in a few weeks. The 90% design review will begin in a few weeks. Next project is the District 3 East 5th Street Reconstruction Project. Retention was released in May, so this project is complete. There is $3,342 that will return to the Regional Transportation Fund, and $8,563 will be returned to the VNT Fund. Next project is the East William Complete Streets Project. Construction will start late this month. Next project is the Carson City Multi-Use Path Improvement and Rehabilitation Project. Construction began in May. The Appian Way Traffic Signal and Intersection Improvement Project. Bids open this month. Awards expected to be at the August RTC meeting. West Carson Vulnerable User Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project. Cultural investigation is complete. There were no comments from SHPO. We're awaiting approval from NDOT. The 90% plan review begins this month. District Pavement Improvements ARPA on Menlo Drive. Construction began in May. District Pavement Improvements ARPA projects in District 2 and 4. Construction began in May. District 1 Carmine Street Rehabilitation Project. We're expecting to receive 60% plans by the end of the month. District 1 College Parkway and Airport Road Pavement Preservation Project. Project will be at 100% design this month with an expected advertisement in late July. District 1 Gonai Road Rehabilitation Project. 30% design review will be in October. District Pavement Improvements ARPA Hillview Drive. This is one of these projects that we did as a quote project, $100,000 with some of the additional ARPA money. This project began in May. Based upon the size, it's actually already complete. We had a punch walk last week. District Pavement Improvements ARPA Lapire Drive, the other one of these quote projects that we put out. The construction began in May. I believe it completed yesterday. District 2 Little Lane Rehabilitation Project. The 90% review is complete. 100% design will be submitted this month. District 2 Stewart Street Pavement Preservation Project. 90% design review is underway. District 2 Fairview Drive Preservation Project. With plans complete, staff are working to advertise this project. District 2 5th Street Rehabilitation Project. 90% plan review is complete. We're working toward 100% plan set for August. The North Lampa Multi-Use Path Extension Project. 60% review is complete. Staff are working towards a 90% review in October. Curry Street Complete Streets Project. NTP was received today, and so design work will begin. Jack Transit Stop Lighting Project. This is a new project on this list using a combination of Federal Transit Authority grants. We're planning on replacing all of the Jack stop signs. You've seen some of those signs are pretty weathered. There's a new design that Chris had shown at this board sometime in 2024. We'll be placing that. We'll also be providing lighting at some of those transit stops. Design has begun with anticipated completion this fall. And the last project is the Ash Canyon Road and Trailhead Project. This is the first time this project has appeared on this list. This was from the Federal Land Access Program grant that we applied for last summer. The part of the way that process works, we had asked for $7 million worth of work. They came back and said, how about $5.8 million worth of work? And so they actually haven't settled on a price yet. We had some scoping meetings. They're working on finalizing their budgets, but potentially project $5.8 million to pave the road from where the current pavement ends going up Ash Canyon to where a proposed trailhead and parking lot will be placed. So FHWA is going to begin that design phase in August. And that's it.
Casey, I got a couple of questions. And on that very last one, will we see the flap project in this summary, or are we still going to keep them separate? Like Central Federal Lands is doing their design, and we're just talking about the portion that's not part of their funding.
So that's a really good question. And Chris and I had a conversation about this. We can add the flat portion of the funding to the top here. I am planning on continuing to keep this page on the report to talk about the updates because Central Federal Lands is doing the design. We'll be doing design reviews with them, but they'll be providing that stuff to us instead of us submitting designs to them. And I'm planning on continuing to have those updates here. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, because when I first looked at it, I say, where's the rest of the project? They said, well, you're dealing with Central Federal Lands, and I go, okay. But other item, we used that ARPA money for Lapeer and Hillview, and it was like, if it's 100,000 or less, we can just go out and get quotes. So I'm thinking, should we keep that in mind for other small projects citywide, and in some of these neighborhoods?
Well, and I think Lapeer still has a section that could use
Right.
the other part of it, so absolutely, I agree.
Yeah,
And
again, it's, how much money do we have left when it's over? But some of these smaller projects, we don't have to have a PSNE, right? So we can save a lot of money doing some of these minor pavement jobs.
Madam Chair.
And certainly, Mr. Martinovich.
I think we can consider that. One of the things staff has been tossing around is the idea of looking at some areas that are small sections that are failed and doing a project like Lapeer where we do a large scale patch essentially. We got some areas identified where that may be a good approach. We haven't flushed that out or facilitated it, but when we start looking at how do we address some of our pavement backlog, that was one of the ways we were thinking about. On Lapeer specifically, Casey noted it was completed. They actually completed more than what was shown on that page. They had additional funding, and they did that whole loop around that little rock area where Moffett Trailhead is there. So they were actually able to do much more than we originally thought. So kudos to the contractor and our construction team for making that happen.
And the last question I have here is, did we ever make any progress with dealing with state lands behind the DMV for our multi-use path? Or we're just gonna have one on either side and people will be cutting through state land?
They'll just walk on, they'll continue their own path
Right.
there that they've already been doing.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Unless you know some miracle. Yeah.
I
don't
have
think
no
so.
further information.
Yeah, no further information. I just on packet page 129, when you look at the basic city-county relief tax, I just want to note for the record that if you look at that November distribution, it's the $152,005. And I really don't see the jump. We didn't see it in our regular sales tax reports, but I think we have been shorted potentially there. And so we're having discussions with the Department of Taxation because they have a new computer system that's doing sales tax distribution, and reports and dollars aren't matching up. So it makes things really difficult. But some of these reports, again, the basic city relief tax comes from a different side, but just letting you know, maybe we'll get lucky and you're missing probably $150,000 out of this, which could do maybe some, like you said, maybe we get that money and then designate it to these, well, maybe these smaller projects that are the local roads, or like you said, at the end of every year, you finish off projects and you say, okay, we have $71,280 left. Maybe those are something we start to say, is there any small projects that we could go and do? So I just thought I'd bring that up on this one. We're still not very happy that somehow we're getting all of our money that we're entitled to, so we're watching that. So maybe we'll get some there. But did anybody else have any comments or questions or anything? Any other correspondence or anything else? Anybody, anything to share? I think, okay, then we'll move on to item C, our final public comment. He left us, but I asked for it. We don't have any? Okay, with that, is there no objection? We are adjourned, and thank you for the great discussion.